Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks ever so much for coming, particularly if this is your third one, your third Thursday in January, joining me. This is the Pioneer Practice Series, week 3. So far we've covered themes of B, U and C. Tonight is build, which we'll get into. As before, I've got 3 guests. I can see on the chat lots of people here from different places, including Australia, America, Scotland and England, so far I've noticed, but yeah, you're all very, very welcome indeed. This series is, I suppose it's practical wisdom that we've learned over a decade or so at CMS around pioneering. We've published things in terms of, I suppose, more popular academic space around mission and theology and so on, which I also love as well, but this project was very much about wanting to do something that was more the practical nuts and bolts kind of stuff, but to do so in a different format. So I published this book over there in the corner, Pioneer Practice, that's full color coffee table type thing with short articles that stand alone on various things. So yeah, one of the sections that we'll get into tonight is called Build. It's a webinar, so there's no pressure to be seen, which may be a relief if you've been on Zoom all day like I have been. So sit back and relax, but we really welcome you using the chat and joining in that way. It's always great to get the comments and flow, and they sort of pop up on the screen in front of me, so I catch quite a lot of them, but if I don't, definitely look at that afterwards and join in. So do use the chat. If you've got questions, because quite a lot happens in the chat, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So if you've got questions for the panelists or generally that you want us to address, put them in there and we'll look at those. There's also at the bottom there next to that a button that says CC live transcript. You can turn that on or off by clicking on that, and that basically gives you subtitles. So if you're not able to hear, then use that button to get the subtitles. So that's the live transcript button. This is a partnership between CMS, Church Mission Society, who I work for and have done for 20 years actually, don't quite know where the time's gone, and Heart Edge. And Catherine Morgan Hickey works with Heart Edge, and she's here tonight, and she's going to be fielding the questions and the chat, keeping an eye on that. Catherine, do you want to say hi and tell us what Heart Edge is?
Yeah, hello, hi, it's really good to be with you all this evening. So for those who don't know Heart Edge is an ecumenical movement which is galvanizing churches to be in the heart of their communities whilst also being on the edge. And so it's a movement. It was initiated by St. Martin in the Fields in 2017, but it's grown into an international network of churches, and there's a big emphasis on churches sharing their learning with each other and sort of peer support. And it's particularly encouraging churches to sort of reimagine their role in society, and particularly to be thinking in terms of God's abundance rather than scarcity. And we do this kind of around what we call the 4 C's of congregational life, compassion, culture and commerce. And you'll have noticed that this series is structured around those 4 C's, this evening being on commerce. So in terms of what Heart Edge actually does, it's a network, but also we focus on kind of transforming practice through encouraging sort of holistic and imaginative approaches to mission. And that's through kind of sharing what churches are learning with each other, through training, and also through consultancy. So I'm one of a team of 4 consultants focusing between us on those 4 C's. And so we support and work with churches. Then also transforming Discourse, so an online series of events, and just basically trying to find like new language to talk about things in terms of God's abundance rather than scarcity in particular. And then also some transformative programs which can then be shared with others to use. So that's kind of the stuff that we do, and the ethos is very much on innovation and experimentation, and that's the overlap then with the kind of pioneering approach. So just really great to be partnering with Jonny and CMS and the guests here this evening in this. Oh, and I'll share later the website if you want to sign up. If you want to join HeartEdge, it's open to individuals and churches, and there's lots of resources available, and also a monthly mailing, which kind of has lots of ideas and suggestions around the 4 Cs. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, and I think I got your monthly mailing this morning or something. So yeah, that's just gone out. And we're particularly this evening, as with Build, we're looking at commerce, and I have to say, of those 4 Cs, I find it really interesting that you've added in that C of commerce. So we'll get into it tonight, as we've done previous weeks, with a few polls. So Martin, I don't know if we can have the first poll. This question is, what do you need most help with in your pioneering? I mean, we've said what 3 things. You can, if you only want to tick 1, you can tick 1. But yeah, up to 3. What 3 things would you say you need most help with in your pioneering? Theology and mission, nous being sort of understanding, admin, money, time, team, help navigating structures, building community, planning, change management, spiritual accompaniment. I'm sure there's a load more things, but when I got to 10, I thought it was time to stop. So yeah, pick up to 3. What do you think? How are we doing, Martin?
About halfway there.
Okay, we'll give you a little bit longer on that. What do you need most help with in your pioneering? You might not need any help. Who knows? Got it all sorted.
Okay, I think we might end it there.
Yeah, okay. Let's have a look. Okay, interesting. Yeah, team and community come out top for you guys. Let me just, oh yes, I can scroll down. Yeah, team and building community. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't ask a focused enough question. I wonder with team whether the help is the team you've got, or whether it's finding people to be on team. So we'll try and explore that with guests later. Then after that, help navigating structures and money. We'll definitely be talking about money, time, team, and building community tonight. Next week's theme is change, and we'll do the structures thing then. Thank you. So next question tonight, there are 3 poll questions tonight. Rank these in order of the amount of time that you spend on each of inspiration, perspiration, and justification. And the way that the poll works in Zoom is we have to list all the permutations out. You can't drag them around. So on the left is the one that you think you spend the most time on. So inspiration, perspiration, justification. What order would you put those in? Hope that makes sense.
Okay, we're about halfway there, Jonny.
Yeah, okay, keep coming. Which order do you think is not a right or wrong answer, of course, in this? Someone's put in the chat, finding kindred spirits is tough in relation to team. Yeah, I think isolation can be a real challenge in pioneering, for sure, yeah. Well, actually, we find that people who train with us at CMS, we kind of ask them what they like about it. They very rarely say the training, though I'm sure that's good. They often, the 2 top things are confidence and community. So that thing of finding kindred spirits is, yeah, good. Okay, Martin, let's go for the results. Yeah. So in terms of rank these in order of the amount of time you think pioneers spend on each. Inspiration seems to come out top with equal second, perspiration, justification. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of even, isn't it? We've got one down here: justification, perspiration, inspiration. Yeah, so pretty split on that, I would say, with inspiration perhaps coming out in front. I mean, this question, the reason I put this in is that I read a book on creativity by George Lois, who ran an advertising agency quite well known in New York. I can't remember the name of it. I mean, it's a very sort of pop book on creativity. I'm slightly addicted to books on creativity, I think. But in that, he talks about this in relation to creatives and their area of work, and I think there's a parallel with pioneers. And he says that he reckons, and I'm sure it's meant to be provocative, that for creatives it's 1% inspiration, 9% perspiration, and 90% justification. Which, when I read that, I thought that he's just trying to wind people up, but I thought it was an interesting point. And in relation to pioneers, there probably is a lot more perspiration and justification in terms of reporting and so on to whoever than we think. Okay, last poll is, which of these best describes your pioneering? Actually, this question I've added in because Phil Smith in Australia, I don't know if he's in tonight, he asked me to add this question in. He was interested to know, in terms of the people who were here, how many were full-time paid or whatever else. So which of these best describes your pioneering or your role? Full-time paid role, part-time paid role, one aspect of a wider job, spare time unpaid, part-time unpaid, full-time unpaid. I mean, the full-time unpaid, yeah, hopefully it makes sense. You're working on it full-time, but you don't get paid. Yeah, anyway, I'm sure that makes sense. So which of those best describes your pioneering, would you say? Okay.
Okay, we're nearly there, Johnny. That's a relatively easy question to answer, I think.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's see what we've got. Okay, so the largest number of people, it's one aspect of a wider job. Yeah, it's really interesting. Or spare time unpaid, part-time unpaid. So there are very few people who are full or part-time paid, 20% between the two. Yeah, that's great. Can you screen grab that, Martin? I'd love to think about that later. Yeah, it's really interesting. Thanks everybody for that. Yeah, so I mean, that's why I think that's amazing in terms of the church. There's so much energy in this, and a lot of the people that train with us at CMS, and they're not training to get ordained. That's definitely in the minority. So a lot of part-time and spare time and voluntary, which is great. Anyway, we'll introduce tonight's theme. Tonight's theme is build. I will just quickly share my screen on this. Not that it's going to show you a lot, but you know, might as well. Yeah, so build. And if you were here the first week, we talked about pioneering being 5 different things, one of which was starting and building stuff. I mean, it obviously goes together with other things. I'm a big fan of a guy called Gerald Arbuckle and his thinking and writing. He's a Catholic anthropologist, and he has this phrase, dreamers who do. So pioneers are not just people who dream, but they do stuff as well. I really love that. And just in terms of thinking about this, in the research I did for the book, I asked a number of questions, and one of them was around what tools will help you with your pioneering. This was one of the answers. Things theological college didn't teach me. I mean, loads of you may not have gone to theological college anyway, but this person obviously did. Fundraising, financial skills, networking, planning, evaluations and risk-taking, juggling complex demands and priorities was learned elsewhere than the church. And I think that's my experience too very often, that the training people get doesn't really do a lot in this area. John, who did the design of the book, has done an animation introducing the theme for each week. Yeah, Edward's saying juggling is a trick. That's definitely true. Let's see this week's animation, which is less than a minute.
New things start in all sorts of ways. Some are meticulously planned. Some take a model of what has worked in one place and reproduce it. Some just seem to emerge. In some cases, People try and start one thing and something else gets catalysed. But if stuff is going to happen, ideas and dreams have to be given legs. There is work to be done. At times, pioneering is really exciting, but it is also work, daily grind, chipping away, determination, dealing with unexpected roadblocks to realise and build the vision.
Thanks. So we'll introduce tonight's guests. If you could bring them in, Martin. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I got involved in stuff through a youth work background, so I didn't really have any business kind of involvement in the background on this. And I've found it interesting, the commerce thing and the building stuff, that it's sort of a new framework set of skills. I think a lot of people who come from a ministry background don't get a lot of training in this. I was definitely like that, so I've learned. But anyway, hi guys, great to see you. So Meg, welcome. Do you want to say where you are and roughly what you're up to?
Yeah, hi, I'm based in Earlsfield. I run a community cafe. We've been running for about 4 years now. It took a lot longer to set up, but yeah, that's basically what I'm pioneering in.
Yeah, it's a lovely cafe too. Steve, nice to see you. How you doing?
Evening. Yeah, nice to be here and join this webinar. I'm based on the coast in North Devon, a place called Croyd, which some of you may have been visiting on holiday. And I am involved in running 3 enterprises and a foundation, and kind of it's part of a bit of a community setup. I'll tell you more about that later.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and we're going to particularly look at one of those businesses and hear about that tonight. Yeah. Idina, hi, nice to see you. How you doing?
Hi, evening. I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm Idina. I'm based in Southall in West London, fairly near Heathrow Airport. I'm a pioneer curate there in a parish church, and also I've started with a team of people a new congregation, new worshipping community, which I think is what we'll talk about mostly tonight.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, in terms of the guests, when Catherine and I talked about it, we deliberately wanted to try and get someone who built a congregation, someone who built a business, as it were, and someone who built a social, well, I don't know the difference between those two, but you know what I mean, a social enterprise. So that's the range that we hoped we'd get this evening. So look forward to that. Just by way of a warm-up question, I often think, well, I know that when you're starting something like, I remember you doing the cafe, Meg, it can be all consuming. So the warm-up question is, you know, in terms of getting balance in your life, what do you do to get away? What's your obsessions outside of work?
I love reading. I spend a lot of time reading, and actually I really like cooking. I spend all day cooking at work, but then I do come home and do cooking as well.
Oh, I'm like that. I was embarrassed when I was thinking about this question, that in my spare time, I do 4 days a week. And in my spare time, I wrote the Pioneer Practice book. I thought that's so sad.
No, but isn't it great that you get to practice what your passions are on a daily basis and then do them in your spare time as well?
Yeah, Tom Brackett's asking what kicking is. I think it's the American hearing your accent differently.
Oh,
Cooking.
Cooking. Preparing food.
Yes. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I like to go outside and either go for a run, a bike ride, or go surfing. And where I live is really well suited for that. The nice benefits of that are you get outside, you get a break, and you get to be in the great outdoors and get some spaces to reflect. So quite often it's a good place for ideas to permeate and ferment, whatever the word is. And also the other bonus is that when you're working really hard, you've got lots going on because you're running an enterprise, and something's not quite going as you planned, it's a bit stressful. You sleep really well at night when you do lots of exercise. So that's an added bonus, whatever's going on.
That is where I'm going wrong. Idina, how about you?
Well, in the last summer, I took up open water swimming, which I was amazed to find, although there is no surf in West London, there are places to swim in lakes, and I was swimming with the ducks and the swans, and it was just beautiful. I know some people will shout at me virtually, but I haven't done it in the cold water because I'm a bit scared of that, but I will take it back up again next year. But in the winter, I suppose I'm probably more eating the food in the local restaurants, Indian food, drinking Indian tea. Yeah, that's what I really love to do too.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll interview all of you through the webinar, but I'll start by chatting with you. Do that. Yeah, Meg, I was looking this up actually. You came to train with us at CMS. I was looking it up in 2014. And in particular, you brought the idea for the home cafe to a week that we run called Make Good, which is, I think technically it's an accelerator. So people come with an idea and work on it through the week, and you pitch it at the end of the week. And now a home cafe is a thing, which is terrific. Yeah, I'm interested in the start of it. What was it like in terms of building from start to launch? I'm going to share my screen while you talk as well, because I'll share a few photos as we go, if that's all right. But yeah, tell us about that early phase from idea to launch.
Yeah, so I had the idea probably around 2012. I was working in retail at the time. I used to work for IKEA, and I was a manager there. I'd always been kind of captured with, I started getting involved in community projects in the area where we live, and really had an idea to create a space where everyone was welcome. So what would it, how would you create that kind of space? And the easiest way to do that was to set up a cafe or some sort of social space where people came to meet, and then you could run events and projects and whatever the community was looking for out of that. So that was the concept. So going on the Pioneer course was phenomenal, because when you were talking about, what you need support with as a pioneer, I didn't really have a theological language to explain what it was I wanted to do. So that was massively beneficial, and especially because the only space we could find large enough to kind of house something like this was the local church. So we went in to speak to them about would they be up for us essentially building within their building. So the building already existed, but what would it look like to kind of create the cafe in that space, which allowed us to have this enormous space, and also allowed us to repurpose the church. It's an enormous church, but there wasn't very much going on in it. It was, I mean, you see how big it is. That's just the back half of the church. So putting the cafe in there was allowed us to kind of tick all of those boxes and really put the church right back at the center of the community as well. Sorry, I think I've gone a little bit off tangent from the question.
Oh, that's fine. That's great. Yeah. And I mean, when the first photo was of the launch, when did you launch?
So that was 2017. So I left work in 2014 and then did the Make Good course. And really the plan was very solid when I came away from there. And we had an idea about what the concept was, what we were going to build, and a plan to take to the DAC, which is essentially the church planning office, which is way more complicated than normal building permissions, because they look at the structure of the building, not just kind of what impact it will have. Oh, it was awful. That took 3 years to kind of pass through planning, and was probably the biggest hurdle. So I needed a lot of support with navigating structures as well. So I thought we'd be done in about 6 months. My biggest concern was actually raising the money for it, which compared to the work we had to do within the church and getting the church on board was relatively easy, actually.
Someone's just put a comment in. It's much more powerful with the pics. I think it might have been you, Elena. Somebody emailed me and said, could I show some pictures of projects? So I thank you, Meg, for sending me some so good in relation to this. And what about the money side of things? So you had this idea. It took three years, a lot longer. It's challenging getting it up and open. And I'll ask you about how it developed in a minute. But what was the deal with trying to get the funding model together and creating a business plan or whatever?
So yeah, we created the business plan, and our biggest overheads was kind of actually building the space within the church. So we reckoned that we needed about 100,000, which was a terrifying amount of money to me. And the business model that we did was we felt, me and my husband thought that if we want actually people to kind of invest in our project and gift towards it, we actually need to do that ourselves. So we committed 25% of the build money to it. And my husband's a builder, so he actually committed to run the project at cost for me as well, which saved a lot of money. And we approached, well, through the Make Good course was amazing at helping us network with people who could help support it. And actually, we came away with no investors, but just a lot of gifters, people who gifted towards the project, which was incredible. I actually built a wall and kind of a little picture of a wall, and I would put people's names on it with the money they'd gifted, and bit by bit we kind of chipped away at it. And that actually, I found that once that started, and once we started telling the story of what the cafe was and what we wanted to achieve, people were really excited by it. But
Yeah.
we didn't get financial support from the church, which was interesting, but then we haven't paid any rent.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And what was the business plan for afterwards? You know, it's interesting, isn't it, how these things work? I mean, you obviously guessed how many coffees you would sell. Did that work out? I mean, and who helped you with that?
So a really close friend of mine, Mark Sampson, he helped me with all the financial side of it. I had a little bit of experience from helping to run IKEA. We had to keep so my management experience there gave me a little bit of a head start. But it's really much like I remember making a spreadsheet about profit and loss and just randomly putting figures in, and I didn't really know if that would work or not.
Yeah, that's reassuring.
So it was kind of like a suck it and see approach. I kind of thought, this is how much we'll need to get through the week. We can't really afford to take any staff on, so we need a lot of volunteers to help us.
Yeah.
So we kind of, I know it sounds awful for someone that is very good at business, but we kind of just muddled our way through. I now know a lot more about that. And I'm really on that side of things. But also it was a really good lesson for me that to not get so consumed by the financial side of things that you block other things from happening. You've got to be able to take risks. And I think actually we just hit profit when COVID hit. So the idea was to be self-sustaining. So the cafe basically funds all the social side of it. So we didn't need to keep on getting grants and things like that. And we'd actually just hit that point. And then we went into a lockdown and got shut down as a business.
Yeah, I mean when I interviewed you for the book, Meg's stories in the book, we talked about lockdown quite a bit, because that pivot is just really challenging, but actually has opened up a whole different engagement with the community in other ways. I mean, it's become a very exciting part of the story, albeit a difficult pivot. We haven't got time to talk about it much, but do you want to say just briefly about that?
Yeah, so before we went into COVID, we were kind of meeting this level of the community, like the top level, and that was great. And we were doing loads of events and supper clubs, and we were doing stuff with refugees. But we were really, I don't know, we were kind of choosing what kind of projects we did. And when lockdown hit, we realised that we'd have to shut as a business, but actually we had this incredible resource and we could feed people. So we started just by cooking up whatever we had in the kitchen. And we offered to feed schools, local food banks, anyone in need. We just put the message out there on community networks that anyone who's hungry or struggling for food, we'll feed you. And then we managed to get some grant funding, and this thing just kind of ballooned. And so that was incredible, because it kept us going as a social enterprise, but also really enabled us to reach out to the people in the community that we'd been wanting to meet for the last 3 years, that we hadn't been able to kind of find or network, or we didn't even actually simply know they were there, which sounds awful.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
So it's been this incredible journey for us over the last 2 years, and the diversity that we have in our client base now and people who come through our door is incredible. We always keep 2 tables reserved for the people that we feel like need to be in the cafe. So everyone's welcome, but we've got these 2 tables one might be populated by, the 2 local homeless guys who come in every day for lunch, or it might be that you know, some people who we started running a social prescription lunch project for some of the people we fed during lockdown who were really affected by isolation. So we now do a lunch and collage kind of session every week. So all these different kind of sectors of our community are coming in now and mixing with each other and becoming friends. And
yeah, there's a few questions coming in I can see, but they disappear fast. We'll come back to them in a minute. But I think one thing I'm particularly thinking of Heartedge's stuff around commerce is it particularly encouraging churches to engage in some commerce. I mean, it's good for income and various things, but actually it helps you engage with the community differently. Can you just say very briefly, in terms of the church, you know, you've mentioned a couple of challenges with the wider church, getting permissions and so on, but how's that relationship been with the church now, and what's the benefits that's come for the wider church community, if that makes sense as a question?
Yeah, I mean, the church were incredibly hesitant to have the cafe in there, and they always spoke about being on these parallel train tracks, that the cafe was we were going in the same direction, but we were very separate. And we've really seen kind of a blurring of that over the last, you know, 4 years since we've been open. I think what we did during lockdown, we moved the food bank into the church as well. And the church became this, not just the cafe, but the wider church became this incredible space where just good things were happening for the community. We were meeting need, we were caring for people. So that's put the church really kind of back right in the center of the community. And the thing, and yeah, we run these community meals, which the church come along to. So the congregants that wouldn't come to the cafe before now come and meet in the space. It's really helped with the number of young families that have started to come to the church as well. So it was a very elderly kind of congregation prior to the cafe going in. So it's really helped with having the church accessible again and welcoming. I think that's the two big kind of words: accessibility, inclusivity, welcome. And people who wouldn't normally come into a church and now would kind of call this space their home.
Yeah, brilliant. We're going to have to stop there. There are questions coming in. We'll come back to them. But if you have a look in the Q&A as well, Meg, you might be able to just answer some of those, respond to people. But yeah, such a great project, and it's just so interesting how it's developed through through response to lockdown and so on. So yeah, thanks ever so much. If you stay here, and I'll bring the other guests in and we'll do a bit of an exercise together. Steve and Dina. Yeah, here we go. So I'm trying to respond to things that people get in touch with me about each week. And last week, somebody emailed me, Alison, who may be here this evening, saying she's in a rural church, largely with over 70s. She's been on loads of rotas, feeling like she didn't fit in, but she noticed this overgrown churchyard. So the question I wanted to put to you guys was, what can you do with this asset of an overgrown churchyard? What enterprise ideas have you got? I mean, by way of a on-ramp, I'll give you a little bit of what she said, which was that she started some outreach in the churchyard, and it's been quite amazing, a bit scary, and in awe of what God has been doing. The churchyard was quite overgrown. And at the PCC, they were moaning about the state of it. I suggested a work party and invited church and village to take part. And I was overcome with self-doubt, thought I must be crazy, thinking I could do this. But we've had several clear-ups. A lot's been achieved with groups of people appearing with some with chainsaws. People, particularly the men, seem keen to do things after retiring and not having so much purpose of a job in their lives. One thing led to another, and I decided to plan some events during the year which have been successful. So, you know, she's got on a bit of a roll with it. But Idina, what can you do with the churchyard?
I'm not sure about the churchyard, but I can tell you about what's happened locally to us in a sort of derelict allotment site. So there's this derelict allotment full of rubbish, and people from locally here were walking past it regularly and thought, gosh, you know, the stirring from God, really, maybe we could do something with that. And they got to clearing it. This was a project that was together with a Rocha and sort of the local churches and local community, and cleared the rubbish and made it into a really amazing community space now that's got a fire pit, an art area. You'll see there from rubbish dump to beautiful space where we can hold community events. There's an orchard area, food growing area, beehives, and you know, for our area, a lot of families, they don't go into the countryside or whatever, so just to come to this space is amazing. It's called Wolffields Urban Nature Reserve, and it's in partnership with A Rocha. And so it's been wonderful. We do cooking events around the fire and, you know, marshmallows, and we've started now also just recently an outside church, so that's happening once a month. So a gathering where we also sort of inspire to do litter picking and, you know, encourage other people to be caring for their local area too. So
yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. I've been there. We live not far from each other. It's terrific space. And when I was there, it got me thinking, would I rather have a church building or that outdoor space? And I know I would rather have the outdoor space. I mean, you've got both, so that's fine. Steve, what would you do with a churchyard that's overgrown?
Well, there's a comment in the questions about graveyard, and I was thinking the church in the village that I grew up in, the churchyard was a graveyard. So I was thinking, could the old people dig the graves? Probably couldn't, but you could possibly get a digger, and they could actually, you were talking about churches and commerce, and they could be the people that dig the graves and get paid for doing it, and then reinvest the money in another project. Maybe there could be a nice spot that could be a community garden where people that live in flats who don't have gardens could come. It's a beautiful, peaceful space away from the digger that might be around the other side of the church, you know, every day digging the graves there. So there you go, a bit left field.
Great, no, that's good. Yeah, enterprise opportunity. Meg, what would you do with an overgrown churchyard?
We've got a little bit of overgrown land down the side of the church, and we set up a community garden there. We've actually got two sides. So we had a little allotment down one side, which now has a massive porta cabin for our food bank in it. But we're growing some vines around it. So yeah, I think gardening is an amazing thing to bring people together, actually. You're being outside, you're working with your hands. We often find people chat more when they're actually doing something. So it's a great conversational space, and just reclaiming abandoned spaces. It's great. Yeah,
definitely. Catherine, I don't know if there's suggestions in the chat. Sorry, I can't quite follow the chat as well as talking to three people. So yeah, if you're there, do you have any ideas coming in?
Yeah, we've got adopting a grave or a headstone with people pledging to clear and tend the grave. So that's happened. Then community gardens. I think there's a couple of people talking about this. Therapeutic community garden, raised beds. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Ideas coming in there. Oh, another one. Yeah, more community gardens. Great.
Yes.
Oh, here we are. Reach out to local schools. Create a quiet space in your overgrown churchyard, a chill out space and work experience for pupils in danger of exclusion.
Yeah, great. I mean, Alison, if you're here this evening, feel free to post in the chat and say a couple of things that you've done, because they sounded great. You were making a mosaic table with the community for outside and various things. They sounded good. Somebody runs Wild Church, art installation space. Yeah, lots of great ideas. Thanks, everybody. Idina, I will chat to you now about the table. So, Meg talked about, building the cafe and a project for that, which is one thing. You've built something very different, which is a community called The Table. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so it is really a fresh expression congregation in our church, Southall, where I live, is an area that is very multi-faith, multicultural, and people from so many different backgrounds are with us, and we really wanted to form something in the church for people that wouldn't feel comfortable on a Sunday morning. So that could be for cultural reasons, language reasons, or just people really on the edge of their communities. And so I'd moved to Southall actually about 10 years previously, and I'd moved there as part of a missional community, a new monastic community. and been living there, getting to know people in the local area. And also we had quite a lot of ministries going on from the church, things like Toddler Group, Messy Church, and all of that. We were getting to know people, and people were asking us more and more about Jesus, getting involved in our sort of community and our you know, just our times together. And we wanted to draw those all together into a congregation. And so, yeah, we started that up in 2017. It has been meeting once a month up till lockdown, really. And it's just a time where we can worship God together, where we can eat together. So food is really central. Actually, food is central on everything in Southall, but we yeah, we have a bring and share meal. And we pray together. It's quite creative in all that we do. We're very Jesus focused, though, with a Bible story, often a Jesus story that's creatively presented. So
yeah, and I mean, I find it a really lovely, wonderful community. It's Jesus centered, but you don't tend to use the language of church around it because people are there from different faith traditions, but somehow prayer, connecting with Jesus seems to connect. Earlier on, a couple of the things, when we said what do you need most help with, people said team. So how did you go about building a team for this and finding other people to be involved with you? And I should highlight as well that you spent 10 years before this happened, so that kind of preparatory work in terms of relationships, it mustn't go unnoticed too. But yeah, tell us about building a team.
Yeah, I think it was just listening out to people's heart for something beyond the church. So having a missional heart, just to be alongside people, willing to listen to others, willing to, to get alongside. So we have a team of about 6 of us. It sort of changes a wee bit, but one person, they actually became part of the team because we needed somebody to be in a video, and they were just nearby. Anyway, they became part of the team, and they're absolutely fantastic listener and just get alongside people, particularly in the kitchen, washing up after the meal. So it's really I think it was just really listening to that. The other thing was that obviously our congregation is intercultural, and we really saw the importance of having an intercultural leadership team. I think that was really high on the importance for us. So just looking out for people from different sectors of the community, really, who could be involved, I guess.
Yeah, and I was inviting one of your colleagues to come and join us, but he couldn't make it. But there we go. It's lovely to have you. And just one last question I was interested in thinking about, and it was, so I should confess, I was round at your house having curry on Sunday night. So we talked about this there, but one of the things that you said when we were talking about Wolf Fields and people getting involved in things were there's always a risk of outsiders getting involved and taking over where you are. And that got me thinking about this theme of build. To what degree in pioneering the challenge is us building something, and to what degree is it enabling local leaders to build something and we disappear or we're in the background? I don't know what you would say about that ideally and in practice.
Yeah, I think we need to continually reflect on that, and reflect on, what's my role with my, social status and who I am and who I've come in. And I think it's really good to do that, and to particularly be in an enabling role in our community. So looking for others, particularly people who have grown up in the local community, to enable them to be leading stuff, and to take it on beyond where we've taken it, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Adina. And I mean, in terms of practice, I would say the best way to learn about practice is to go and, well, maybe it's to do it, but the second best way is to go visit, go and see it and talk to people who are doing it. And Southall is an amazing place to visit. So everyone on the webinar, just invite yourself to go and see Idina. She won't mind, and go say hi.
That's what I've so missed in lockdown. We used to have so many people coming. We can go to visit the Gurdwaras and the local community and see around, and we haven't had so much of that. So please do come. Somebody asked a question whether we meet weekly. We've actually started meeting in a home 3 times a week, and in the church building once, 3 times a month, and in the church building once a month. Yeah, it's
Lee's asking if you'll make a curry. When I went round,
I'm not making the curry, but I know plenty of people who absolutely love making curry and absolutely love having visitors. So absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Idina. Our time's run out. Catherine, I wonder if it looks like there are quite a lot of questions, maybe related to Idina, maybe related to Meg or something else. Can you come in and field a couple of questions?
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions have been quite specific to Meg, and I think she's working her way through those. But one of the things I guess would be interesting to pick up on, there was a question earlier on, right at the very beginning, about this what do we need to help us build? And one of the things was, well, what about community audit and consultation? And I guess this ties in a bit with what Idina was just talking about there, this idea about, I suppose it's a bit like kind of, whose project is it? You know, where's the stuff? Yeah. So I don't know if I'm misinterpreting that, but yeah, does community audit consultation, is that part of build, or maybe it's part of C?
I would say it doesn't matter, does it? I mean, I think it's an extremely valuable thing to do. So yeah, seeing is really, listening would be another way of thinking about C, wouldn't it? It's listening to what's going on and noticing what is there. I mean, one of the guests I had on the series of webinars last year set up a cleaning company called Clean for Good. That's a terrific project, but that began by doing a community audit and paying attention to what was going on, and they noticed a lot of cleaners traveling in who weren't being treated well, and they ended up thinking maybe the good news might be a cleaning company, and that was through a community audit. So I think that's a really, really good thing to do, listen, yeah, and so on. Okay, any other questions, or that's it?
Well, I think there's this was addressed to Meg, but I guess it's a broader one as well. What does helping someone follow Jesus look like in your context?
Yeah, that sounds like that's addressed to Meg. So Meg, maybe you can answer that one in the Q&A. I mean, I think that's an interesting question to address to Idina as well. She answered that a little bit. I've been fascinated how people are drawn to Jesus whilst remaining Sikh or Muslim, and and just living with that interest in Jesus in a community. Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating in terms of some of the ways we think about things. So yeah, exciting projects. I'll interview Steve now. We've looked at building a social enterprise cafe in a church space that's really brilliant in itself, but also transforming the community around it, really. And I think really good news for the church. They don't know how they lucked out with that landing there. Idina building a faith community, and Steve, your flow's much more been in terms of, you know, the business enterprise space, and you mentioned 3 or 4. We're not going to have time, I'm afraid, to talk about all of them, but I was particularly interested this evening in picking one, and I think we're going to talk about Eden. So tell us about Eden.
So Eden is a renewable energy business that was set up in 2014, and the company was set up, and actually prior to the company being set up, I was operating another enterprise in London in the commercial property sector, and I was renting small offices out to tenants, and I was really keen to limit the amount of carbon being emitted from the offices in central London. So we had 25 buildings, and we had, I don't know how many tenants, but they were paying an all-inclusive rent, so they could have the air conditioning on, the lights on, everything going all the time. And I was just quite conscious that I just didn't like the fact that, you know, there was just no control over people's behaviour. And if they're paying an all-inclusive price, they tend to leave things on all night. We try and, you know, turn off buildings late at night, etc., etc. Anyway, in the end, I thought we need to generate some of our own electricity and try and offset some of this carbon. So we ended up building a number of solar arrays on commercial rooftops. So that's the rooftops of warehouses, sports clubs and schools all over the country. And that was a big offset scheme that we ended up building to kind of fit in with, you know, with the objectives of that business. So that was back in 2012. And at the time, there was a government feed-in tariff, and the company was quite cash generative, so it was generating a good cash flow. So we were able to put that cash into solar investments effectively, and it was giving a really good return because there was a government feed-in tariff at the time. And so the guy I was doing it with, it was someone who I'd met through a local transition town meeting, which is kind of just people trying to transform their local area in terms of transitioning to a lower carbon economy. So Scott, who's now my co-director in the business still, he basically said, "What do you want to do now after we've done this?" And I said, "Well, I think it'd be a great idea if we just carried on going. It's a really good place to put our money. It's a really good place to be reducing carbon emissions." And so that's how Eden was born.
Yeah, I mean, and tell us about it now. That was, what did you say that was? 3 or 4 years ago?
No, it was in 2014 we officially launched the
Okay.
business. So we sort of did that in 2012. And so we just carried on developing solar rooftop arrays. So that's where we would typically find a warehouse and that had quite intensive use inside it. So maybe engineering or chilled foods or something like that, or a school. Yeah. And we say to them, "Look, we can put some solar on your rooftop. You can pay for it, or we can find someone else to pay for it, because there's lots of institutional money. So that's city money. Some of you may have heard of the acronym ESG, environmental social governance, which is a real buzzword right now. But there's a lot of money looking to go into social investments. So we match that money up with the investments in the solar panels, and then the electricity generated from the panels gets sold to the people within the buildings. And that's how they get paid for. They sign up to a 20 or 25-year agreement to purchase the electricity generated from the panels. And it's typically about 25, 30% below their prevailing market price for electricity. So it's a win-win all round. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrific idea of business, and presumably it's boomed. I mean, now is the time for this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, so we sort of been, so for about 3 or 4 years, we were just about turning a profit, and there were 4 or 5 of us. And in the last 18 months, the business has absolutely rocketed. So we're up to 25 people. We sort of trebled in size. We're on a very, very steep takeoff curve. Turnover is growing very quickly, and the sector is having its moment for a number of reasons. I think the electricity price crisis is really driving people to think about where they're buying their electricity, and this is a great way of hedging part of your electricity. If you can put solar on top of your building and benefit from that, and kind of take yourselves off grid in that respect, that's good. The other thing is that people have got net zero ambitions, so we're helping them to achieve those. And also building regulations are tightening all the time in terms of the energy performance of buildings, and this is a great way to improve that as well.
Yeah, and I think in terms of mission, I don't know how you think about what you do in relation to mission, but I mean, a definition of mission that I really like and often use is creation healed. It's the simplest one I've come across, that, it's about the renewing, the healing of all things, and the world's broken. And I think the planet itself is like front and center in mission right now. So you probably don't use the language mission a lot, I suspect, but I see what you're doing tied into that. Mission can get just collapsed into the church space, but this is what I think is so interesting about business for good and so on. It can really be part of that same thing.
So I think the things for us are that the big, hairy, audacious goal is that every single solar panel that goes on a roof and is generating electricity means more fossil fuels stay in the ground, less fossil fuels are burned and used. So that was the kind of big mission, if you like, in terms of being in the sector. So we got into the sector deliberately. We sold the business that I referred to earlier in London, the office business. We sold that in 2015, and we decided to then get into 2 sectors, which were social housing and renewable energy. That was where we wanted to kind of invest our time and our talents. And tied to our enterprises, we have a foundation as well. So surplus profits from our enterprises, we choose to put a portion of those into the foundation. And that works in the areas of climate change, which ties in with renewable energy, and displaced people. So we do a lot of work with refugees, and that ties in with the social housing enterprise as well. So kind of by design, we thought about the sectors and where the challenges are, both those issues, the refugee crisis, the climate crisis. These are going to be long-term issues throughout our lifetimes, and actually they're going to converge more and more in time. There'll be more and more climate affected refugees. So we felt these were the sectors that we wanted to be in. And when I refer to we, there are 4 of us. So there's myself, my wife, and another couple, and we own all of our enterprises together, and we sort of do life together and try and have a transformational element to the wider work we do in terms of trying to do something good.
It's terrific. It's terrific. I think really inspiring. And I mean, through your foundation, you have actually backed quite a number of pioneer projects that we've connected with. And I'd almost daren't ask. You probably backed Meg. I don't know, but you don't have to answer that question. It's not one of those two things. Who knows? But I wanted to ask you a couple of other questions, if I can, to jump slightly away from your business. One is you together with Cathers and Shannon, who other people don't know, you've been one of the people who've led our Make Good Week, and it seems to me like you have a passion, or at least you have a gift for enabling other people. So, yeah, 2 questions really. Tell us very briefly about Make Good, because I'd love people to know about that, because it's been our most popular thing, and we've seen so many things start out of it. But secondly, what are some of the key things you've seen make a difference in terms of people that come along with an idea to actually get them to be tangible?
So Make Good is the accelerator Jonny referred to earlier. So basically people come for 5 days. Generally it happens in somewhere like North Devon or the Peak District. And it just takes people out of their environment, and we just get them to take them on a journey from their passion for an idea to actually how will you implement and deliver this. And the week culminates in a pitch and pledge. So each of the students have to pitch their idea to the rest of the group and some outsiders we invite in. And yeah, it's a really fantastic week. But I think passion is such an incredible thing that I think people have to be absolutely convinced about the problem they're trying to solve. And the reason for that, the roots of that we often talk about, is where does the passion come from? And quite often it's, driven from a faith worldview, obviously, or people's life experiences, from tragedy, quite often. And so if the passion's there, then people generally have the impetus to really try and make it happen. And you can tell quite early on, because people kind of tell us about their idea on day one, and you can quite often tell when people stand up, you think, are they going to deliver this or not? And that may sound a bit, whatever, but often you can tell the way people talk about their idea, whether or not it's actually going to be deliverable. I think the other thing is that obviously there's some life experience things, and in terms of people's experience, I was a right-hand man to quite a full-on entrepreneur for a number of years from my mid-20s, which definitely taught me some good things and some not so good things. But I think in terms of your life experience, that's an important thing. And
I think in the church, people involved in business aren't always celebrated, or it's certainly not talked about much in the church space. So I think that we need to hear about that more and see that can be something that's really terrific and good. Thanks ever so much, Steve. Sorry, I keep thinking of more questions. I find this area of commerce so interesting, really, partly because I think it hasn't had enough attention paid to, possibly. But I was thinking about HeartEdge, and they're particularly working with churches. There's quite a few questions coming in about, can you put solar on churches, etc. But I mean, what's your, if you've got a tip for churches thinking about engaging in commerce in some way, what opportunities do you think there are for churches? I mean, obviously it depends on your context.
Yeah, I think the church has to be a bit careful not to be seen to be, making money, seeking to make money in a way that maybe is very different to its mission to obviously help people in its community. However, things like the home cafe is obviously a brilliant use of the space. And actually lots of the church projects we've seen are social enterprises. So actually the profits are being ploughed back into other things, or if there's any surplus, there are some protections and limits around those things. In terms of, we've seen all kinds of ideas over the years. And there've been things linked to, so one I liked recently was a kind of food bank, but it was linked to food coaching as well. And,
nice.
And it was just quite a nice little twist on the idea. And again, they were servicing their local community a bit like Meg's doing, but also they were sending out the food coaches to try and help people to be able to be more self-sufficient rather than being dependent. So I quite like that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Our time's run out. It's great talking to you about the commerce side, and I do think people need a lot of encouragement and support and networking. I think people in business can feel a bit isolated in the church, is my hunch. Catherine, are there questions? Sorry.
There's not specific questions to Steve. If I can just chip in though, I mean, in terms of the church side of things, Heartedge talks about the kind of churches being able to undertake commerce, which in kind of 3 different categories. Instrumental being about any sort of business which might be raising money, but then exemplary as well, where it's basically trying to do business in an exemplary way, so paying good wages or having a minimal environmental footprint, but then also social as well. So we kind of, in Heartedge, we look at that whole kind of range of different sorts of commercial opportunities for churches. And I'll also just do a quick plug for my colleague, Dave Nicholson, who is the kind of consultant around commerce and can accompany churches who might be wanting to explore some of those things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff coming through the chat. I keep popping up, people sharing ideas and so on. So I always send a follow-up email out, and I'll do that this week, but I'll try and pull out some of those ideas, assuming that's okay with everyone, because you've shared them here with people to add into that chat. You may not get it till Monday this week, by the way. I've got a busy Friday, so you may not get it on Friday. I wonder if we could bring all the guests back in just for a final thing. So the time has just whizzed by this evening, as it does every week. I can't quite believe that that's happened so fast. Yeah, just a last kind of thought from you guys. You know, I think lots of people have an idea, a dream. You know, I mean, I may be a bit romantic. I think God's put a dream in everyone in that sort of a way. What's a final kind of thought for you guys? Someone's got an idea, a dream. What should they do with that? What tips have you got? One each. You haven't had warning about this question. Meg.
Yeah, Meg, you go first.
Go for it.
Go for it. Yeah, good.
Otherwise, you don't want to turn around in 20 years' time and wish you'd done something. I think it's better to try. Make sure you've got a good team of people around you to keep an eye on you. Yeah, bring people with you. Hold it lightly, but go for it, because what have you got to lose, really? And look what you have to gain.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. Yeah, Idina?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Just do it. But I think also the other thing is it may take time, you know, like stick with it. Don't give up. I mean, you know, for us, what we did was on the basis of 10 years of relationship building and just being in a place. I mean, I'm very keen on being in a context rooted in a community and just being there and just seeing what's there, seeing what God brings across our path, and then just doing it. So
thanks, Idina. Steve?
I would say give it the friends and family test. So ask all your friends and family whether they think it's any good, and if they say yes unanimously, then go back to them and get the startup capital from them and get going.
Yeah, nice. I like that. That's a good tip. Very good. Okay, thanks, guys. Our time's pretty much up. Just final plugs as ever. What are we plugging tonight? I mean, I think I've kind of plugged really the CMS Make Good thing. I feel like I've done my plug. That is, you know, that has out and out been our favourite course that we run. And if you've got an idea and want to work on it, I mean, it's just a fantastic space to do that. So I'll send that out in the email. Heartedge, Catherine's talked about already. Let me just share a slide for the website quickly. Catherine, anything else to say? Heartedge?
No, just say please have a look at the website. Please consider joining and seeing the resources which are available, and seeing our kind of online events as well.
Great. Okay. And the outro will have a few slides in. You probably saw it at the start. If you're interested in the Pioneer Practice book, there's a discount code, which is CMS Heart Edge. That means you can get it for £10. Next week, the theme is change. And what we're looking at in change is, well, I suppose it's three things, but a big question is, how do you work in systems and create change? I mean, Meg touched on the challenge of that earlier, but that'll be one of the questions, but also what's the change that you're trying to make and focus on? So yeah, I found change has grown as a theme for me since I started helping people. I used to think it was just see and build, but actually navigating that change is a big part of it. So that's what we're doing next week. Thanks ever so much, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate you guys all taking part, people who are the panelists, but also everyone for taking the time to show up, and thanks for your comments in the chat and engaging. And do take Meg's advice to heart. You know, go for it. What have you got to lose? Whatever the idea is percolating away. And I hope to see you next week. As ever, you'll get a link, and people will be able to watch it who are not seeing it, who are not here, or if you can't see next week. But yeah, anyway, hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks.